It's not a puzzle waiting to be solved. New life can be yours within an instant. All you have to do is simply call. When we call on the name of Jesus, we find all of the grace
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Nikki Presley. I'm the Texas Director and Chief of Staff for Right on Crime, our criminal justice campaign here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Faith and Criminal Justice System, a powerful conversation about faith-based programs and how they are transforming lives, reducing crime, and restoring public safety across America's South. At Right on Crime, our mission is simple: fewer victims, less crime, and safer communities. Public safety is the measurement for any effective criminal justice policy, and we work to ensure that those solutions are always rooted in accountability, redemption, and personal responsibility. Nowhere else do we see those values more clearly than in faith-based initiatives. Across Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, these programs are delivering results showing reduced recidivism for those participating. As conservatives, we understand something fundamental. Public safety is government's first responsibility, but government alone cannot change a heart. Faith gives us a framework for transformation that policy alone just can't provide. Today, we'll hear from leaders who are proving that truth every day. And to get us started, I'm honored to introduce someone who embodies that mission. He serves as Senior Vice President of Correctional Programs at Prison Fellowship, and he's leading efforts nationwide to bring purpose and redemption into our nation's correctional systems. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Cody Wild.
Thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege to get to be here with you all this afternoon. At Prison Fellowship, our mission is to encounter Jesus with those impacted by incarceration. The two most important words in that mission is, one, Jesus, and we're a Christian organization. But then the second most important word is the word with. At Prison Fellowship, we don't do things to people, nor do we do things for people. We do things with people. And I learned this very early on in my tenure with the organization, which I've been there for about 11 years now. My first role was as a program director of a program known as the Prison Fellowship Academy, formerly the IFI program, which actually has its origins here in Texas. I had served as a pastor before getting into this work and thought that I was going to go into prison to bring God there. And I quickly realized he was already alive and well. Jesus already lived there. And it took me all of, a few days to realize this. And I remember walking into the program space at the IFI program, the academy on the north side of Minneapolis, in Minnesota, which is where I live. And I remember walking in, and there was a table of about 7 or 8 men who are all incarcerated, sitting around it with their Bibles open. And they were reading through the Gospel of Mark. And I just sat down and listened to the conversation they're having. And they were going through the 5th chapter of Mark, which I've probably preached on before. I consider myself a Bible guy. And as I sat there and listened to them, it's kind of a strange story. Jesus casts out this legion of demons from this guy into a herd of pigs, and then they all drown themselves, and he gets into a boat and crosses this body of water and is met by this crowd of people. And this guy named Jairus comes to the forefront of this crowd. And he says, Jesus, I've heard of these miracles that you've been doing. Would you come and heal my daughter? She's about to die. So Jesus says, yeah. So he and this crowd, they go on their way to Jairus' house. And as these guys are talking about this story at this table, they begin to key on this one character in the story. And while Jesus and this crowd are on their way to Jairus' house, there's this woman who is sitting by the side of this road. And it says that she had this physical malady that was not only incredibly painful, said that she tried everything in her power to get better and nothing worked. But because of the nature of it, it made her ceremonially unclean. Nobody would have anything to do with her. So as these guys are recounting this story, I can see their demeanor changing and their heads nodding. And in this story, this woman too had heard of Jesus and his miracles. And she thinks to herself, if I can only touch the bottom of his cloak, I'll be healed, I'll be made well. So Jesus walks by, she touches the bottom of his cloak, and it says she was instantly healed. And Jesus stops and he says, who touched me? Now everybody's probably wondering, well, Jesus, you're in a crowd, there are a lot of people touching you. She says, no, who touched me? And she says, it was me. Now in any other situation, this would have truly been a death sentence for her. She was unclean and she touched the cloak of a rabbi. But Jesus responds differently than anybody else. And I could just see the longing from these guys. And he kneels down and he looks her right in the eye and he says, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Now go in peace." And he gets up and he proceeds to Jairus' house. As I listened to these guys talk about it, I'd been a pastor, I'd gone to seminary. These men taught me about what the gospel is fresh. In one action, Jesus not only reconciles this woman with God, there's a vertical orientation, but at the same time he restores her to her community. There's a horizontal one. That Jesus isn't just concerned with the soul of a person, but it's the whole of a person. And this is a gift that I learned from these men in prison. It was as though I went to seminary all over again. See, I believe that the Lord saves us not only from something, but into something to give us a new vision for life, to give us a new name and a new purpose. So to translate that into program and policy, perhaps those we thought were at the center of the problem might actually be at the center of the solution. That in God's infinite wisdom, he wants to use the weak things of the world to confound the strong and to turn it on its head. That God has a plan and a purpose for the men and women sitting in our prisons across the country. This has both cultural impacts inside of an institution. It creates a better place to live and work when people begin to think about, how do I not only not commit crime, but how do I actually make my community a better place? But it also has generational impacts. It is not just about second chances, but first chances as well. As I said, our mission at Prison Fellowship is to encounter Jesus with those impacted by incarceration, and this is fundamentally a ministry of proximity, of getting the community on the outside and the community on the inside close to one another, which is where our vision comes in. At Prison Fellowship, we envision a revival of the church inside and outside of prison that brings justice, mercy, and hope to our culture. And perhaps it's the men and women behind bars that the Lord has ordained to lead that charge. And so it's an honor and a privilege to get to be a part of this big story and to have partners like you all looking at the whole of the system, looking at individuals as well as culture and communities. And I look forward to the remaining conversation and panel discussion here in just a moment. And so thank you for inviting me here to talk a little bit about what we do and how we're seeking to contribute to this conversation. And it's at this time that I would like to introduce the moderator of today's panel, Dr. Richard Johnson. Thank you.
I am going to have a seat.
And I'm going to bring everybody with you, if that's okay.
All right, that's great.
You help?
Is this going?
Thank you.
Hello? Testing.
Nope, you'll sit. Turn it on. You'll sit in the middle of the
Middle.
three.
Testing, testing. Well, good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Good. Well, it's a blessing to be here. And my name is Dr. Richard Johnson, and I am the director of the Booker T. Washington Initiative and senior fellow for urban education here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Today, we're going to be focused on a couple crucial questions. A crucial question: how can faith-based programs inside and outside of prison strengthen public safety, change lives, and support the success of individuals once they return home? And I am joined by three distinguished panelists, and I say very distinguished. And the gentleman next to me, and I will introduce them this way. The gentleman next to me is, don't look at me like that, is Commissioner Burl Cain. I know him too well. Exactly. Commissioner Burl Cain, and we're actually brothers from another mother. We've been together for over 20 years. Commissioner Burl Cain of Mississippi Department of Corrections, with more than 4 decades of correctional leadership. Commissioner Cain oversees Mississippi operations, programs, and reforms across the state system. He previously was employed in Louisiana State Penitentiary Angola, and was appointed to the MDOC commissioner in May 2020. His work has emphasized faith-based programs, institutional culture change, and reentry initiatives. The man, the myth, the legend. And to his right is Renee Deloche, and she is the Louisiana Assistant Secretary of Public Safety and Corrections with over 20 years of service in probation, parole, and reentry. Secretary Deloche oversees reentry education and chaplaincy programs in prisons across the state of Louisiana. Renee. And Mr. Jason Clark is the Chief Program Officer of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice with nearly 20 years of criminal justice experience. He oversees agencies' programs, divisions, including chaplaincy, education, reentry, and related programs. Mr. Clark also began his career in broadcasting journalism before joining TDCJ in 2006, where he now leads efforts to improve conditions for staff and individuals in custody. Let's talk about what works, why it works, and how these successes can be replicated in other states. First of all, I want to say this, and I shared this with the panel before we started. I see this as a first annual symposium, and I would love for us to create a tri-state relationship. And I went as far as naming it, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi Faith Alliance. So the TLM Faith Alliance. Now I hope that catches on. But I want to pose the first question to, why don't I do this? Why don't I give each one of our panelists just maybe a 2-minute freestyle, where you just kind of talk to the audience about your faith initiatives and how they're working in your states, and what you see is a positive going forward in terms of adding to those initiatives. Commissioner King.
Good, now it'll work. Thank you so very much. It's an honor to be here with you all today, because I'm very passionate about what we're going to talk about, because I wasn't smart enough. I never worked in the prison until I was a warden of a prison. So I had no prior experience. So I didn't have any tradition, anything. It was just what worked. And when I was sent to Angola, they said, you go change it, don't let it change you. And just keep it out of the ditch. And we're going to leave you alone. Go do what you got to do. And so I wasn't smart enough to figure out the seminary, but it fell in my lap. It was a God thing for sure. And when it did, we started to see great change. We started out, when I got to the prison, we started out with Experiencing God, Henry Blackaby's app, because raised in a Christian home, had to go to church every time the doors opened, didn't want to go. Mom made me go, and so I'm glad she did. But anyway, went to LSU, went crazy. But most people do when they go to college. And anyway, was pretty rebellious. So have a degree in agriculture. I'm an ag teacher, so it was very unlikely to be where I was in my career. And I just knew the right people at the time. But anyway, the seminary did fall in our lap. It fell right after I had done an execution, which was my first, and which was kind of a trying time for me and made me search my soul really good, about life and what was happening. But two old guys from the community was there, and they said, and I was complaining about not having higher education for lifers, because Angola had 4,000 lifers. If you had less than 50 years on your sentence, you went to another prison. So 50 years plus, and so there was no education program. It wasn't going to ever get out of prison. And they had rules. You didn't go and do education on death row because you were going to execute them. Well, I wanted them to read the Bible. I wanted to be able to read the rules. So they need to read and write. So we need to have education. So didn't have any education per se at that time. So they said, we believe the seminary would come here if you'd give them a place to have school. And I said, well, man, I'd give them a place in a minute. You really think they'd come? They said, oh yeah, we'll go talk to them if you want us to. I didn't ask the secretary, anybody else. I just said, hey, this is school. Let's just grab a root and ground and do it. So sure enough, they said they would, and sure enough, they did. And I'll conclude, but I brought this book because we knew we had to research what we did, that evidence-based research is critical in prison. This little book cost $1.2 million. This little book right here. This little book is the research that Baylor University did on the Angola Prison Seminary, and did it work? And so from one donor in Fort Worth, Texas, Byron Johnson and I went and sat down with him for about 20 minutes, and he gave us $1.2 million. Now, the strange thing about it was Byron Johnson fell over on the table and hit his head because he never got that much money that quick before. So anyway, he did. So this prison seminary program had been really researched, probably more than any other or all other prison ministry programs together. However, when I got to Mississippi, I went there specifically to do at Parchment what we did at Angola, because they had just had the riot in 4 months before I got there, and so it was to change Parchment. Well, we had a seminary there too, but it was inactive. So I activated it quickly, called Byron Johnson again. He said, "Got to have more money." So now we're at 1.6 million. Had to raise 400,000 more. And so I did, from private donors. So the 1.6 million, because now we proved that Parchment did the same thing Angola did, so it proved the seminary worked. So this is the spiritual space that's necessary. Once these guys go through the seminary, and at our seminary we'll have 150 in class every day in a small state like Mississippi. And there's also, I started a nonprofit when I retired, and so now these seminaries are in about 26 states and then in 8 different women's prisons, because we got to do the women all across the country. There's one in Oregon, the most liberal state in the country. There's one about to open in Maine, and they're all over the place and just scattered throughout the whole country. So we saw that it works, but the people in corrections have seen that it works, because what does it take to change? What are we about? Corrections means correct deviant behavior. That's what it means. So how do you correct deviant behavior? Okay, here's a prisoner, inmate. Inmate is a selfish person. He will steal your lawnmower. It's all about himself, self-gratification. He does things that he wants to do. He's not controlled by anything other than what he wants. He wants, I want. Think about it, that's what they are. So the only really way that you can really make the difference is you have to change him morally. So therefore, the moral component should be great big in the scope of things in correcting deviant behavior. Morality first. But then the other thing we found is he has to have a job. So we can do the morality, but no job. He gets out, he's got to make a living. He can't make a living. He has a felony. It's hard to get a job if he doesn't have a skill. So focus on the skill. So I'm proud to announce that in Mississippi today, we have 368 inmate teachers who are teaching skills and trades to other inmates. This is saving us about $14 million, because I couldn't afford 368 vocational teachers, because it would cost us probably $40,000 apiece, and that's how we come to that number. So therefore, it really has to heal itself. We have to enable it to do it. We have to guide it to do it and control it to do it, but lead it to do it, but it's really a God thing. And then we change culture. So we see that this happens. I'm talking too long. Got a little bit more. Okay, so let's finish the circle. Then I'm going to stop.
I got to moderate now. All
right, you can moderate. But let me finish the circle. Look, here's what happens. They finally behave so well that these lifers finally get pardoned or start getting out of prison. Guess where they go? They go back to where you and I can't go. They go back into communities that are violent, where drugs are, where guns are, where all these things are. They can go there because they have status. So therefore, we see revival in this country start in those areas, coming right back out of the prison, making it full circle. So that is full circle. That's why this is so important. That's why Texas is important. It's the biggest state. Y'all have field ministers. I'm getting ahead of you. You're probably in about 60 prisons. But that's real good.
Now, Burl, I'm going to have to
so that's full
moderate
circle.
Right now.
Okay.
Secretary Deloge.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the stage with both of you, who basically started everything in Louisiana. So everything that Commissioner Kane just talked about, he started in Louisiana, and I have the privilege to continue what he started. I can't say enough about the seminary and what it does to the population, what it does for our correctional officers, and what it does for our communities. I started off in probation and parole, so people were releasing and they were talking about the things that they got while they were incarcerated. And the gentlemen and the women that went through the seminary programs or the faith-based programs that we have inside of Louisiana, they want to go back. They want to go back and keep pouring into the men and women that they were pouring into while they were incarcerated. They want to pour back into the communities, just like Commissioner Kane just talked about. They want to go and they want to do what we can't do. I can sit up here and I can talk all day, but I don't have any skin in the game. I don't have any street credit. They have it all. And for a peer to sit there and talk to somebody else about what they went through and to say, don't do what I did and try to get them early, you can't put a price on that. And just like Commissioner Kane was talking about, in Louisiana, we have peer ministers, we have tutors, and we have mentors. And they're teaching all of our classes. They're teaching our industry-based certifications. They're teaching our VOTEC. They're teaching our HISETs. They're teaching what they have learned, and they're paying it forward. So they're not sitting there just idly getting 3 hots and a cot. They're being active. They're being proactive. They're being pro-social, and they're changing the environments inside of our institutions. So I'm going to defer my rest of my time to Mr. Jason.
Mr. Clark.
Well, let me first just say how blessed I am to be on the stage with these folks. I mean, you talk about legends in the industry, and so feel really honored to be able to share the stage with these folks. I think Nikki really kind of touched on it. What's the core responsibilities of the criminal justice system, if you think about it? It's to keep the public safe and to prevent additional crime victims, right? And so here in Texas, we work really, really hard on that and have invested a significant amount of time and effort in reinvesting in people, because ultimately these folks are going to get out and they're going to move back into your neighborhood. And so for us, it's really a return on investment for us. If you think about it, saving taxpayer dollars, but also saving so much misery for additional crime victims that are out there. And so I see it as a calling for me, a ministry for me. And so I believe in it deeply. And really, I think you also, Commissioner Kane kind of touched on this, it's got to be evidence-based. And so at the end of the day, what you're doing, does it work? You got to measure it. And I'm glad to say that what we are doing works. It works. And so we have to keep sticking with the things that we know works.
I'm going to start on the end with Mr. Clark. What elements of these programs do you believe have had a measurable impact on prison safety and the ability to reduce crime once the individuals are released?
So let me first just start and say that I believe that faith is really one of those key ingredients that's got to be part of the equation. We have more than 26,000 faith-based volunteers that come into our prisons. And you think about that's a lot of folks, and that's a force multiplier for us. But common elements, I'll say two. Personal accountability and restoration are the two that I'm going to come back to. And I'll just start with faith-based dorms. And Cody actually mentioned this. In Texas in the late 90s, we started designating living spaces for those that wanted to have individuals around them that shared the same faith. And so we had men apply. Those men would be screened. They have to sign a contract to say that they're going to abide by the rules. And really, we started dipping our toe into that. And what we saw was some great results. So this was back in 1997. And so we have grown that year after year after year. And now we have more than 154 different faith-based dorms all across the state at 94 facilities. And when you talk about accountability, these men hold each other accountable in these living spaces. The seminary. So you talk about restoration. I will tell you that we stole from Louisiana the seminary idea. So at the time we had Senator Patrick and Senator Whitmire went along with my former boss, went down to see Commissioner Kane and see that at Angola, and they were so impressed that in fact they came back and my boss was given marching orders. Make that happen. Do what is happening in Louisiana and Texas. And so in 2011, we launched a seminary. There are no state dollars going to this. This is all privately funded things. And we have individuals who go through, they spend 4 years getting a degree just like you would in the free world in biblical studies. But here's where we talk about the return on investment. So these guys have long sentences, and many of them may not get out. But the intention is then put them to work. And so we put them to work as field ministers. And so they go out and they do all sorts of things. They minister to the other men that are in white. Because as Renee said, they bring a level of credibility that I can never bring. But they bring it. And so we've seen baptisms. We've seen them preventing suicides. We've seen them restoring families. And when you think about prison, and you think about oftentimes it can feel hopeless. But these men have purpose now. They have purpose. And that purpose gives them restoration. They are restored. They are restoring other men. And I'm so happy to say that we're going to soon have some female field ministers out there and have them walking the tiers. And that's going to be impactful and it's powerful. So thank you, Commissioner Kane, for letting us steal that idea. Hopefully try to make it worthy of Louisiana here in Texas.
Yeah, Secretary Deloge, Louisiana has expanded faith-based reentry programs in recent years. You have a strong church partnership in Louisiana, which is a support to individuals serving long-term sentences. What has been the influence that you've seen that have on the overall culture and safety in our prisons?
Thank you. You can't put a price on it. When it comes down to the culture, we've expanded. We have volunteers, just like Jason was talking about, volunteers that come into all of our facilities, and with it, they're pouring into the men and women, and they're there when they release. And so with that, you have that community, you have that in-reach and that outreach. And so inside the facilities, it gives people a sense of pride. It gives them a sense of unity. It gives them community inside the facilities. It reduces their idleness, because that programs that they're going through, like the NOBTS Bible College, it's the 4-year program. And I'm proud to say that Louisiana has over 500 graduates from that program with their associates, with their bachelors, with their masters, and they're pouring back in. And so once they have that education, the security officers inside the facilities, they have reduced interactions with them. Whenever there is an interaction inside of a dormitory, they're the ones that are quelling it. So the security officers can focus on safety and focus on that 20% that's causing the problems. And then our peer ministers, our peer mentors, our peer tutors, the culture is like I say, holistic. It's about the entire person. It's not just about spiritual. It's just not about reentry. It's not just about education. It's everything combined. And this gives them that platform to be able to foster that inside of the institutions. So our volunteers, we couldn't do it without our volunteers, and we couldn't do it without our peer mentors, like Commissioner Kane talked about. When it comes down to the price tag of having to hire these people to be there 24/7, nobody could afford it. And so the return on investment, it's priceless. You can't put a price tag on somebody that has the lived experience, that's in there pouring into their fellow inmates. They're in there all doing it. They're all doing the time. And with it, you have your long-term guys who have been there for long times and have long sentences. In Louisiana, like Commissioner Kane was talking about, a lot of people at Angola aren't getting out. But what they are doing is preparing those that are releasing to be better people when they do release.
I want that to sink in a little bit. I think you said over 500 graduates. That is a lot of graduates with bachelor's and master's degrees in theology coming, that's inside the prisons.
Correct. And with those graduates, we have less than 3% recidivism.
Less than 3% recidivism.
44 of those are women. So we have 44 women inside the state of Louisiana that have graduated from Bible College.
That deserves an applause. I don't know about you guys. I gotta give it up for that.
I would like to take credit for that, but that's because of the gentleman sitting to my right who started it and had that vision way back in the day.
Absolutely. You know, Commissioner Kane, I want to talk a little bit about the, you and I worked together on, when I was president of Louisiana Prison Chapel Foundation. Talk a little bit about the importance of having a chapel on prison grounds.
Oh, well, that's kind of everything, because we have all these guys that's trained, and they're graduates, could be ordained preachers if they could be, and so forth. But when you have church in the kitchen, that's not God's house. But when you have church in the church, and it's a building sitting there, then it's God's house. It's an island of freedom within the prison, because when they walk in there, they're with God. They're in his house. It's not the prison's house. So that means everything to them. And what happens is then they start to plant churches themselves with each denomination, whatever they are, which, be whatever. And then when they do that, these church groups then start to dissipate the gangs. So then you see the gangs start to reduce in numbers and actually be eliminated. And I know when I left Angola, I think today it doesn't have any gangs because the seminary replaced all the gangs. And so here I am in Mississippi. I had 6,000 gang members when I got there and only have 20,000 prisoners. So it was infested with them. Now we're down to about 800 because, again, we built 4 churches. And so these churches are probably the most used churches in the whole state because they use them every day. You use your churches every day. They're in that church. There's groups in there. And you have 2.5 or 3 hours we would give to one denomination, and the next one moves in, they do it. They use it. The churches are critical, and that's what we have to have. We have to have this space for church. We have to set it aside and do it, but then we have to pay for it because the taxpayers don't pay for it. We get volunteers to donate the money to build them. That's what you and I did in Louisiana. How many did we build, Richard?
21.
21 churches.
Let me also, because you hit on something that was really, really important, and you talked about gang violence and gang reduction. As the churches grow and expand, they squeeze the gangs out, and that is something. Now, there's a lot of violence that goes on in the prisons, inmate to inmate, inmate to guard. And one of the things that we used to do years back was measure, because when you walk through a door, you have to sign in. And when you walk out of the door, you have to sign out. And I wanted to check on, during my tenure as the president of Louisiana Prison Chapel Foundation, after about 5 years, I wanted to check and see, what the utilization of the chapels really were. And of course, I talked to, at that time, it was Secretary LeBlanc. And so they were able to get those numbers like that, and there was over like a 1.5 million hits back then. And that was almost 20 years ago. So I don't even know what the number would be right now in terms of the utilization of those facilities. And as we continue to graduate folks from the seminary programs, and as they go out and go into those other churches across the state of Louisiana, now the state of Louisiana, Mississippi, how many churches you guys have built there?
4.
You built 4?
4, we have 7 prisons, so we have 3 more planned. And I'd like to mention, we started Prison Seminary Foundation that starts these all across the country. But right now today, there's probably 2,200 inmates going in a seminary classroom somewhere in America today, and there's over $4 million yearly raised every year to pay for it.
That's another applause. Oftentimes when we talk about prisons and we talk about, corrections, and in which our panelists have rightly said, corrections mean to correct the behavior. But if you're not doing anything to correct the behavior, then you're allowing the behavior to perpetuate. And I want you guys, starting on the end, Mark, talk a little bit about the reduction in recidivism rate and basically how safety has increased inside of prisons. Because, Angola was once known as the bloodiest prison in America. And for that to transform, God really had to step in and work with the hearts of men. We'll start on that end.
Well, there's no doubt that there's a correlation between faith-based programming and a reduction in recidivism. And we've seen it here in the Lone Star State. We'll just start big picture first. When you look at the 3-year return rate for those coming back to prison in Texas, it's less than 17%, 1.7. And that's pretty remarkable when you look across the entire United States. We're one of the lowest in the entire United States. But then you drill down a little bit more, and I'll just use Prison Fellowship as an example. Prison Fellowship has less than 6% return rate. And so just an incredible return on investment. You look at the seminary program, and many of our guys are not going to get out, but 15 have, and 0 have returned. But there is another piece that's the culture piece that you can't necessarily measure, but you can feel it when you walk into a prison. I've felt it. I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, I was at a facility that has a hospice unit. And these are men that are dying behind bars. And their families can't be there. And so some of these field ministers are spending their last hours with them. And if you can imagine, before that, being by yourself while you passed away. And so these field ministers are able to go and comfort them at their last hour. And guess what? The correctional officers see that. They go back and they tell their families about it. And it really starts to change how people feel about individuals. Yes, he may be wearing white. Man, that guy has got a heart. And he's showing it. It's proof positive. And so there's some things you can't measure, like culture, but you can measure return rate. And we absolutely are doing a great job here. And it's a lot of it is because of the great programming that we have here in the state.
Secretary LeBlanc, we've been talking a lot about how faith-based initiatives impact the inmates. But I want to spin off a little bit on what Mr. Clark just said. What has been your experience of the impact on the correctional officers?
That's an easy one.
I think I throw you a softball.
Yeah, that's super easy. And so with it, just like Mr. Clark was talking about, in Louisiana, at our Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, we have a hospice program. And the hospice program, we have the inmates that have been trained to be hospice care coordinators, for lack of a better term. And when they're working side by side with your correctional officers, doing the job that many people can't do, like I couldn't. The compassion that somebody has to show to be a hospice person, it would crush me. It would crush me. It truly would. I don't know if I could continuously, day in and day out, hold somebody's hand as they're passing away. I would take that on myself. And so with that, with the correctional officers, they see what the inmates are doing. They're seeing what the hospice people are doing. They're seeing the people that graduated from the seminary, how they're mentoring, how they're pouring back into people, and they're making people human. I mean, you see the human side of it. We all bleed red. We're all gonna die one day, but to do it with dignity and to have somebody sitting next to you holding your hand that was in there with you, maybe in your cell, maybe grew up with you while you were in there, because a lot of these gentlemen are going into jail when they're young and get very harsh sentences in Louisiana. So with that, they have spent their lifetimes together. And some of them sit there with their friends, holding their friend's hand and tell them it's gonna be okay. And so staff sees that, and when staff sees that, and the correctional officers see that, and upper management sees that, it changes the trajectory. It changes their mindset. It makes you a human, and you see the human component of people. And with that, I think that the tempo or the pulse of Louisiana corrections, because of the vision that somebody had multiple years ago, has made it where it is today. And from 1995 is when, I believe, NOBTS, New Orleans Bible College, came into Louisiana State Penitentiary, and it's just grown and mushroomed. And like we were talking about, you can't measure that. It's emotions, it's feelings, it's dignity, it's pride, it's humanity. And so you just, like I said, it's amazing.
And to the audience, I know you guys are looking at Commissioner Kane. He looks like a nice guy. You know, he does. He looks like a really nice guy. But he kind of just drafts people into things, man. Next thing you know, you're spending your whole life doing it.
A lot of churches.
Well, one of the things that was so impressive in terms of Commissioner when he was warden at Angola is he would have all of his assistant wardens. They would have prayer meeting, and they would have prayer studies, and all of them, and they were required to do it. I don't know how you do that with a government job, but I guess he'll tell you.
It wasn't a democracy. I didn't say it in the microphone. No, everybody just got on board. And I remember Warden Vittorio made a statement on one of the videos that we have, and he says, when they changed, we changed. And it's true, because they didn't have the behavior issues they had with them before, because they started taking control of their own culture. We can't really fix it. We can lead. It's just like trying to drive a bunch of cows. It's wild. You can lead them, but you can't drive them with a bucket of feed. They'll follow you, but they go every which way. And inmates are the same way, because you can lead them, but you can't drive them to do anything. They're grown men. They're going to do what they want to do, and they can tell you to your face what you may want to hear, but that's not what's in their heart. But this leads them to the right direction, to do the right thing. And so then it makes everybody's life safer and easier. And we saw that men, women, and children could walk in death row at Angola and anywhere in the prison. We'd say, where do you want to go? And it was safe, totally safe. And there was the strangest thing was when the inmates came to me, the inmate preachers, and said, y'all are using too much profanity and y'all need to stop cursing. Your mother wouldn't like that. I said, you're really telling the truth. She really wouldn't. So let's just all quit right here. We're going to all quit. Y'all too, we're going to hold each other accountable. And so profanity in that big old prison with 5,000 prisoners stopped. There were no profanity anywhere. And so that meant the culture of the place changed. Listen, I didn't do that. I was not that smart. I don't claim any credit. That was a God thing, and that's what was so special. He showed us how to do it. And he showed it at the very worst prison in the country. And that's what Senator Whitmire and Senator Patrick saw when they came there. And they said, we want some of this too. I knew that if they did it in Texas, we call it the Big Kahuna, then everybody would do it. So I was really blessed that they came to see it, and so they did. And so Texas led the deal. I mean, look where they are, look what they do. So it made it easier for all the other states to follow along. And some of them don't, but it's hard to raise the money to do it, because it takes about $140,000 to $160,000 every year to sustain one of these seminaries. And so that's a lot of cost. And when you keep adding it to it, that takes donors from within the state. And so we have to raise all this money and so forth. So that's how you do it.
Well, that's a good thing that we're in the state of Texas. We do everything big here in Texas now.
Yeah, y'all do.
Yeah, so I mean, and we're a very wealthy state, so I think you're making the pitch at the right place. Here's the thing, though. I mean, I had a chance to go and visit with Governor Mike Foster, and when Governor Foster was the governor of Louisiana, and I was the president of Louisiana Prison Chapel Foundation. So I went in to tell you about how it's a God thing. I went and I sat down with the governor in his office. And so I had some data with me, and I was explaining to Governor Foster the effects of the prison chapels, the institutions that we had chapels in. And so it showed that the recidivism rate had dropped. It showed that violence on the campus had dropped. Incidents had dropped. And it was, for the most part, you know, and Burl, he helped that because he built a golf course right there in Angola. So it was so peaceful you could go golfing. So, Governor Foster looked at me and he said, Richard, these are astounding numbers. These are astounding numbers. You know, what do you attribute this data to? And I said, Governor, I know you want a scientific answer. I said, but I'm going to give you all I got. He said, well, what is it? I said, Jesus Christ. He leaned in on his desk. He said, really? I said, that's all I got. And so he says, look, he's going to work with us in terms of the trades program and also in terms of giving us executive order. And matter of fact, he called his wife in and he said, what I want you to do is to get my list, and we're going to have a fundraiser here at the mansion, at the governor's mansion. How important is it that the governor buys in 100% on these programs? And I'll start here, and then we'll work our way back.
It's everything, really, because then if they do, everybody else will, and also then the donations are easier. So it's very important.
He's the GOAT of fundraising, and so 100%. It top-down leadership, right? So if they're talking about it and it's important to them, then it's important to everybody. And for people that aren't bought in, if the governor's sitting there and he's on board with the secretary, and then everybody underneath the secretary is on board, then we're good. And then we can do those fundraising efforts. And having a conversation earlier today with the two gentlemen sitting to my right, we're going to go ahead and get that last chapel built in Louisiana in our Allen Correctional Facility.
Absolutely. I mean, actually, we thought we were done, but now they come up with this other one, so that'll work for us. We'll make it happen. It's only one. I mean, we've done all the rest.
It's recorded, right?
Yeah.
No pressure. Well, I'll just say here in Texas, Governor Abbott, Governor Patrick, absolutely are men of faith. And so embrace all of the programs that we have going on in prison. Both of them, including Mrs. Abbott, have spent time there. And so it is just absolutely awesome to be in a position where you know that your state's leadership embraces what you're doing because they want to see people change for the better. And they want to see fewer crime victims at the end of the day. Again, getting back to public safety and reducing crime. And it's just, I feel really blessed to be in this state and with the leadership that we have.
Wonderful. So now we're at the best part of our program. This is the part we call Q&A. And so we're going to give the audience an opportunity to ask these wonderful, brilliant panelists questions about what we've been discussing. So if you have a question, we have a microphone here and we have a microphone in this aisle. Just raise your hand and they will bring the microphone to you.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Perla Hopkins and I am a child and military family advocate. First of all, thank you to the entire panel for sharing your God-given talents to help the state of Texas. In 7th grade, I had such amazing history and social studies teachers in the state of Louisiana. I grew up as a junior deputy sheriff, and in 7th grade, we went to Angola. So I can't believe that we have all shared the same steps along the way. Here in Texas, we have had an influx of just child predators, specifically in our schools. About 2 years ago, not on our watch, officials in law enforcement came from Mississippi and other places to come and talk to us. Mrs. Abbott was there as one of our speakers as well. And we touched based on fentanyl crisis and on sextortion, specifically targeting children. And again, K through 16 students are a passion of mine to keep them safe. We've also had an influx of crimes happening at the University of Texas the last year. And so forward thinking as the TML Alliance, your partnership with Texas in such an important topic, let's keep students in mind, especially minors, because I don't know how we can specifically, and I hope that, my question is, how can we reduce the crime when it comes to child exploitation, and what can we do about it as some of our offenders are reformed? So thank you all very much.
We'll let either one of you guys take it, or either one want to take a bite at it.
Take a bite out of crime.
I think just education. Education, if you see something, say something, especially when it comes to child exploitation. If there's one victim, there's usually multiple victims. And so with that, identifying that and letting people know that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to speak up and give them that safe environment to do so. And with our population that's currently incarcerated, going through programs, identifying that they have victims and that they, not paying it forward because they're not atoning for what they've done, but it's educating people on possible things to look for. Having them go into the schools and talk to people, talk to parents, having people come up to the institutions and come inside and see what we're doing and see how we're rehabilitating people and pouring into people. And with that, talk to them real talk, one-on-one. Like, do you know what's on your child's phone? Do you know what your child's been surfing when it comes down to the fentanyl and the opioid, that pandemic, and it just is ever changing, and trying to stay ahead of that game and educating parents on what to look for, educating teachers on what to look for. There's not enough education that can go around for that because it's ever changing, but to stay ahead of the trends or be right there with the trends And if it's happening in the population, it's happening in our institutions. And so we're seeing the fentanyl, we're seeing the opioids, we're seeing the drugs on the inside of our institutions. And so we're addressing it on the inside and then also trying to share what we learn on the inside with our partners in the communities.
I think it's also important too to know that you just can't be a warehouse for individuals. You can't just have folks breaking rocks. So a lot of the inmates that come to us have drug addictions, and that spins off into the crimes that they committed. They also have cognitive thinking errors that's got to be corrected. And so rather than just warehouse people and hope that they get better, you've got to give them the tools. Now, not every one of them is going to pick it up, but you got to give them the tools. The last thing I'll mention is it's a great program, and it's another one of those volunteer-based ones, and it's Bridges to Life. And I'm not sure if you've heard this, but it's crime victims that come in and sit down with not necessarily their perpetrator, but someone that committed crimes. And sometimes, unfortunately, these inmates have not even rationalized what has happened, all the people that they have hurt and the cascading issues that have come along. And so having that connection and bringing those crime victims in, I think is impactful and hopefully stops that cycle of crime that does impact families and children.
My name's Heather Rainwater, and my question is for Mr. Clark, because I'm from Texas, so I have a Texas question. Okay. So what do you see? I love hearing all of the wonderful things that are happening here that are in your minds and hearts to accomplish and have been accomplished. But what do you see, Mr. Clark, as the biggest challenge to driving this sustainable reform in Texas?
I'll just tell you, at the moment, it's a drug issue. I'm sure I don't speak for just Texas, but Mississippi and Louisiana and others, that it's a 24/7 job that people are trying to infiltrate the prisons and bring in contraband. Whether it means dropping it down from a drone, mailing it in, any way that you can possibly imagine. And so, again, most of our inmates have a drug addiction problem. And so trying to keep those drugs out is a just full-time job. And it's something that we are squarely focused on because it's hard to give treatment when people are falling back into addiction. And so that is something that we are working very hard on, both security-wise, but also treatment-wise as well. I went to a dorm recently, and these are guys that had made a pledge to say we are going to be sober because they have spent most of their lives being addicts. And so it's a personal choice that they have to make. But being able to see them even put those drugs down and walk away from it was really impactful for me to see that. But at the moment, that's what I would say is kind of our biggest challenge, is keeping that contraband out and keeping our trajectory going in the right direction.
Hi, my name is Dane, and during the panel you discussed the importance of getting buy-in from top state officials, and it was mentioned that you were opening a prison ministry in ultra blue and ultra secular Oregon. So could you talk more about how you got buy-in from top state officials there and how other faith-based organizations might go about getting buy-in from state officials for their programs?
I think he's talking about Oregon.
He's talking about Oregon.
How'd you get the buy-in from Oregon?
Well, what we did to get the buy-in from Oregon was there was it take me a little bit of time to tell you this. There was a judge there whose daughter was murdered, and he wrote a book and all about this because he forgave the guy that committed the murder. And then he found peace, but he was traveling across the country to speak in prison. So he called me and had my number. So I told him, yeah, come see us, come stay a week and bring your wife. Because at the time, our prison was really safe, he could. So he came there and saw it. And then when he got ready to leave, I said, now I want you to do something for me. And then I said, bow your head and close your eyes, we're gonna pray. And so he did. And I said, Lord, don't let this man rest until he starts seminary in Oregon. He can do it with your guidance. And so I knew he had a lot of power in Oregon. He was a judge. So he got 5 or 6 senators to come to Angola and stay with us and see it and visit with us. And they did. And so from there, they went back to Oregon and they saw that it wasn't something you couldn't do. They saw it would really benefit the prison. They saw the research as well. And so they did it. And they just flat sure did. And there it is. It's still there. They had their first graduating class, and you couldn't kill it off if you tried to because they love it's there. It's made their prisons better.
Hello, my name is Matthew. I have a friend who used to be a prison guard at the Huntsville prison. My question is probably for you, Mr. Clark. He is now a police officer. He doesn't do that anymore. But I had a conversation with him a number of years ago, and I think he still believes this way in regards to how he views the prisoners. We believe in corrections, and we believe in, rehabilitation and realigning with society. But he saw them as not people. He said, I go into this job and I can't look at them as people. I can't look at them as humans. They're just a number. How do you correct that within the guards? And how is that something that I can try and have a conversation with him about?
Oh, great question. And it's really a culture shift, right? And so if the expectation is that you want this person to be better, it's not our job to punish them more when they come to prison. And so I'll just give you an example where we got some pushback, and it would be something that you would think would be very simple. Just referring to someone as Mr. or Mrs. So that's what's expected in society when they get out. So why am I going to use derogatory language or something that's unacceptable when talking to them? And so we have worked really hard and pushed really hard. Also trying to beat down and say, you're a change maker. Like, if there's anybody that's closest to the situation, it's you. And so if you can help change a life, then, man, you are impacting public safety, and your job absolutely matters. And so thank you for bringing that up. It's a big ship to move, and we're moving it, but it's going to take time.
Commission, well, go right ahead. Go,
I would say, can I echo what he was just talking about?
And then come on down to commission.
So when you're a correctional officer or a community supervision officer, you're dealing with people every day. As a police officer, you have that one impact with person. Possibly if you run into them in society, again, a second impact. But when you're a correctional officer and you're a community probation and parole officer, you have the ability to affect change. And that change isn't just for that individual, it's the ripple effect, right? The butterfly effect. It's their cellmates, it's their communities, it's their family members. You have the power as a correctional officer to change lives. I'm not saying that you don't as a police officer by any stretch, but the impact in the dealings that you have with them, you have more frequent dealings with the person, well, daily. You have daily interaction with them. Versus with a law enforcement officer, you arrest them, you're one and done. So I think that's the difference, is that you're pouring into these people, you become part of the community, because inside of our institutions, they are communities. They're little communities. I mean, Angola has its own post office. So, I mean, we are a city inside of a city.
Commissioner Kane, what say you?
Well, I'm older than them. I do things a little bit different, because when we first started the seminary, the employees didn't realize this is real college. You really got to go. You can't be late for class. You got to go. So the guy at the gate that wouldn't open the gate, we named him the demon on the gate, and we put him on the night shift. And so then, therefore, they would start opening the gate. So the guy that was saying he wouldn't talk to him and so forth needed to be talked to himself about, not fussed at, but say, hey, look, we got a program here. You got to help us with this program. You don't want to be a stick in the mud, and you don't want to hold it back. So you either got to get with the program, or either we got to find you another place to be, because we can't leave you there while you're doing us damage to our program. So you just matter, and if it don't fit, get rid of him, move.
How did I know you were going to say that? In closing, we've heard from 3 states in the South that are shaping a new future for corrections, one where faith, community, and public safety are in complete interest, are not in complete interest, but alignment in forces. I want to thank our panelists for their honest discussion, their leadership, and their support in transforming lives in our prisons. Thank you so much. Give them a round of applause. And thank you to all of our TPPF employees, audience here today, and those who are watching online. And we look forward to continue to work together as we help build correction systems that are not only just, but redemptive, changing hearts and changing lives to create safer communities for all of us. This is a tri-state solution to a national public safety concern, and we have committed to continue to work together. So thank you all for being with us today. God bless you and God keep you, and they'll be here for some questions if you want to come up and shake their hand and talk with them. So thank you again, and this concludes our discussion.